Now, do you notice anything weird about this image? I feel like there's like a little number, maybe a number that's a little bit too small here that many may not notice. But it says that this game is being upscaled from as low as 360p up to not even 4K on a console, even though the PS5 is supposed to be a 4K console. Yeah, it's only going up to 1800p, but maybe console players won't notice, you know what I mean? But 360p, that sounds insane. Yes, it's going dynamically. It's trying to use less resolution when the game is really hard to run and then get more to try to achieve 60 FPS all the time. But I feel like we haven't seen resolutions like that since I was born in 2002. Maybe Mario 64 was playing at 360p. Maybe I feel like that was higher res than that. And combining that with this little splash screen that happens when you open the game, and it does not get me exactly excited about the performance in Silent Hill F. Nowadays, consoles and PCs are honestly pretty damn close to each other, and I was like, dude, this feels almost too crazy to be true. And you even see some scenarios that on PlayStation performance mode to get 60 FPS, upscaling from as low as 360p, that there is some differences with like the ambient occlusion in the game. The environment doesn't quite look the same, and you can also clearly see the sharpness differences between quality mode and that. And there's even the PS5 Pro version compared to the quality modes on the base PS5. And then you'll see the PS5 Pro almost looks like there's this like built-in noise to it. The upscaling technology that they're using within the game has this weird artifact to it. And they still have not fixed that on the PS5 Pro to this point in time, at least in Silent Hill F. This is also happening in the Silent Hill 2 remake that was also built in Unreal Engine 5. And I see these things from some other YouTubers, and it's not looking that good.
Oh, what was that? Oh, the stutters are here, man.
Despite the frame rate being solid throughout, towards the end of the game, I did find a couple of sections where it was a bit more choppy.
Still, it is an Unreal Engine 5 game, but thankfully, there's no stuttering. Randy Pitchford will say it's fake.
And this is getting so obviously bad now that I was able to perfectly predict when a stutter was going to happen in this game. I'm expecting a stutter here. Yep. It's like, you can just tell with Unreal Engine. It's like, oh, there's an area change, stutter. So there's some people saying that, oh, it's stuttery mess, Unreal Engine 5 slop. But then there's other people who are like, oh, we didn't even notice a difference. And this could be an area that is actually optimized on consoles that does make sense for consoles, which we'll go over. Why are so many games launching in this weird way where they're relying on upscaling as slow as 360p? But then I get some mixed messages from like Digital Foundry.
Image quality is really the primary differentiator here. Performance mode is soft but stable, with a 1080p-like resolve, judging from comparisons to the PC code. Internal resolutions here fall around 1080p as well. 1080p as well. 1080p as well.
But then Digital Foundry is saying that it's like 1080p upscaled. And I don't really know what is correct, but what I do have and what I can do is basically simulate a PS5 on PC and see just how bad the situation is. So this is a PS5 GPU, and I have a graphics card that is basically the exact same thing, the RX 6700. Then I can combine that with a CPU that is basically the same as a PS5 CPU as well, and really put this to the test. Also on PC, for some reason, at least in the main menu of the game, you can't hit escape to go back through the settings menu, which is just weird. Yeah, loading into the game on this system isn't a very good experience. As you can tell, it's very well optimized for PC and everything. Not exactly great. All right, so what we're gonna do is walk through here, and then you get a stutter immediately walking through this zone, get another stutter, which is massive. Did you see how big that one was? Hopefully this translates as well for you guys. And then another stutter, and another stutter. One of the major issues is because, you know, the GPU right now we're upscaling from 900p up to 1800p, which is similar to what the guy kind of was saying about the PS5 on the performance mode to get 60 FPS. Yes, we're getting technically 60 FPS, but because our CPU is pretty slow, it has these problems with shaders. So when you load up this game, it does a shader pre-compilation step. These are the effects in the game that are supposed to be processed on your GPU, but they need to be pre-computed so that you don't run into these stutters, and they need to be cached so that you can call on these effects without using a ton of resources on your system. You cache these shaders typically before you play the game, but their shader pre-compilation that is supposed to cover all this is not very long. So you end up with this issue where these shaders are getting compiled as you're playing. And your CPU is the one that handles most of this shader compilation stuff. So if your CPU is kind of slow, kind of like the one that's in the PS5, then it's not going to run all that well. And this could be a thing that is optimized for PS5 because technically when we cache shaders, so for a PS5, if all the hardware is technically the same between every single model, then that means that they could just compile that once and then set it to download onto your PS5 and then have that already pre-cached without having to do a whole shader compilation thing. So on PC, you have to deal with it. This happens even on a very, very fast CPU like the 9800X3D. You know, when I was playing that with a freaking 5090 in the system, I'm still getting stutters. It's still some weird shit. Now, in terms of like actual performance, I don't think this game is bad at all. You know, the 6700, yes, it's the GPU in the PS5, but if you think your PS5 is super fast, then you're probably wrong, buddy, because the 6700 is not a very fast GPU nowadays. We can upscale to 1800p from 900p and get, you know, in the 70s. At least in this area. Now, it depends on the area of the game. Like the earlier section in the game is literally like a forest and is super, super hard to run. And the 6700 struggles there. We're still getting over 60 FPS in that area. I think this is very playable. The game looks visually good. We're at high settings. I think we're using Lumen, Nanite, all the ray tracing, all that kind of stuff. I think the game looks genuinely pretty good, and it doesn't take that much to be able to run it. So in terms of an Unreal Engine game, this one has surprised me. I did not think that this would ever happen, especially judging by Silent Hill 2 Remake, which was built on Unreal Engine 5, and how many issues that game had. And then you're seeing this game with not that many problems, and that gets me kind of happy, all right? Now, if we wanted to try to expand those results on the 6700, because I did test some other things, and this only allows you to upscale from 900p to 1800p because it only allows you to go to FSR performance upscaling. That's 50% scale. So I'd had to use another program and bring in Optiscaler to try to push my upscaling even further. And from that point, we're able to upscale from like 720p, I think it was, up to 1800p. And at that point, the game looked pretty rough. But the performance wasn't literally the worst thing in the world. We're getting over 70 FPS, going up to 1800p high settings. You could put an FPS cap on there and then you'd be running like a PS5 at this point. I also tried something funny where this game, it shows how unoptimized or weird it can be. You can turn off Lumen in the game, which handles the global illumination, which means that it lights the scenes basically. If you turn that off, the entire game just falls the fuck apart. If you turn off Lumen, there's nothing there to take its place. Now with this, I also turned on screen space reflections instead of lumen reflections. And yes, we did actually get quite a bit of extra frames with this. We went from around the high 40s with it all on, and then like 70 FPS with all that shit off. But I would never play the game like this. It looks absolutely atrocious. The first time I saw it without lumen in the game, let's turn off GI. Wow, that looks... What in the hoot and holler and what the fuck is going on here? What in tarnation? But at native 1080p high settings, not using upscaling in Unreal Engine 5 that relies so much on upscaling, you can still get over 60 FPS typically in one of the more demanding sections of the game. I think it's very, very reasonable performance from a type of game like this. Like if you were to go to Unreal Engine 5 with Borderlands 4, it running pretty poorly, that's not great because you need some frames in that game to get some, you know, you need reaction times. It's a first person shooter. It's pretty quick paced. Having higher frame rate in that game matters quite a bit more. Whereas in Silent Hill F, 60 FPS, you know, there is some combat in the game, but I don't think it's that crazy. And I think you can get away with like 60 FPS. I think it feels pretty smooth. I even kind of like playing this game with motion blur on. I know, curse me. Smite me from where I stand or sit. Now you can try upscaling at 4K as well. And at performance mode, so 1080p upscaled to 4K, you can get about 60 FPS on the 6700 high settings. The game still looks decent enough. I'm not upset with that at all. I think it's actually pretty damn good performance. And that brings me to, hey, we can check out the RTX 4060 in the game, which is the most popular GPU in the world at the moment. And at 1080p, yeah, you could max it out on the 4060. Isn't a great experience. You're only getting like maybe 40 FPS, and I just wouldn't really recommend you really playing with that. You could try to upscale at 1080p and get away with that, and it's just not really that great of an experience. You're getting just barely 60. I would prefer to just turn down the settings a little bit. And from an Unreal Engine 5 game, compared to a lot of the other ones on the 4060 that run like ass, I don't think this is that bad. We can get like 60 FPS at native high settings at 1080p, not bad at all. And you could also upscale and get over 80 FPS with DLSS. Now, something I want to point out that has completely boggled my mind with this game, if you turn on TSR, which is the typical upscaler that's built into Unreal Engine 5, it seems like you get worse performance than running at native. You're getting like 50 FPS. Like, why the is it worse? I'm confused. Is this even working right? I'm confused. You go into the settings menu as well. There's like the screen percentage thing, which would typically be a sign of upscaling. You could turn that down and upscale to make up the gap to your native resolution, but that doesn't really seem to work either. It makes the game look absolutely awful if you turn it on with TSR. But then you also jump in and it seems like other upscalers run perfectly fine. Like here's TSR on the left and then DLSS on the right, NVIDIA's upscaler. And you get over 80 FPS on NVIDIA's. And why is Unreal Engine 1 broken? I just don't get it. Like, we're on PC, we kind of need upscalers and stuff. And I was confused if the consoles were using TSR, and that's why the performance was so bad. Digital Foundry even said it.
I think TSR is the image treatment of choice, based on certain artifact patterns in the final image.
So I don't recommend using TSR in this game at all because it tanks your performance. I don't understand why, and it doesn't even look like better or worse. Like, I think FSR and DLSS look just fine in this game for the most part. Now we can also step up to the RTX 4070 Super, which is basically on par with the RTX 5070 nowadays, which is about $550. If we want to play it maxed out native 4K, the performance isn't that great. You will notice that I'm considering TSR quality as being basically native because TSR just doesn't work right. And for some reason at 4K, it doesn't allow you to use native TAA. I don't know why, but the option just does not show up. Let me know if you have a different experience. It appears for me at different resolutions though, just not 4K. But if you really wanted to, you could upscale from 1080p up to 4K and now get over 60 FPS on the 4070 Super. And I don't actually think the game looks that bad with this performance. So I'm not exactly hating this at the moment. But more reasonable graphics settings would be, oh, you could turn it to quality mode with high settings at 4K. I think the 4070 Super getting almost 70 FPS in the game, really not that bad. I think that performance is extremely reasonable. And really this card is built for 1440p, and unlike so many other Unreal Engine 5 games, you could actually max this out at 1440p and still have a playable experience. You know, you're getting almost 60 FPS in a game like this. I don't think that's actually the end of the world. Then you could just upscale that at 1440p and get like 80 frames. Really, the performance extremely freaking reasonable if you want to max it out. But if you don't even want to upscale and you just want to turn down settings, you could just turn it out to high settings and get almost 80 FPS as well at 1440p. Very, very good performance for an Unreal Engine 5 game. Last card that I tested and I wanted to show you was the RX 9070 XT. Now this guy is a pretty damn fast graphics card, but I thought was interesting is that they do support FSR 4 upscaling because upscaling is important nowadays. This was supported day one at launch, which isn't exactly common in terms of a lot of AMD's drivers and stuff. But yeah, you can go in there, it's enabled, you can do it day one. And the FSR 4 upscaling does look pretty damn good compared to FSR 3.1, which is also in the game. Now, if you want to max out this game at 4K, again, we're using TSR quality technically, which doesn't really make a ton of sense. But, you know, getting about 30 FPS or so, not a great experience, but it does technically work. Now, if I were to actually do this myself, I would upscale. You could damn near get 60 FPS at 4K. Here's FSR 3.1 on the left, and then 4 on the right. Go to 1440p, and this game can be maxed out on the 9070 XT, native 1440p, getting 60 FPS, which I think is very reasonable performance for this type of game. Or if you want to turn the settings down to high, your FPS increase is actually kind of insane. You're going from like the mid 60s to like almost 100 FPS. That's probably how I would play the game. I don't think it's necessary to completely max these games out unless you're playing on a goddamn 5090. So the performance is pretty good across the board on a lot of these different graphics cards. However, this game does have its fair share of quirks. Obviously the TSR thing I mentioned earlier, also these stutters. It harkens back to a lot of what people were saying is like, I just felt it was kind of stuttery. Especially on PC, you're gonna feel that more. I also noticed this weird graphical bug where if you're just standing still and you look and it seems like there is a faint grid pattern printed over the screen. I don't exactly know why that's the case. If you know why, let me know, because I am freaking confused and you just kind of don't notice it when you're in motion, but like it's there. Now I can say I have actually seen this in other games as well. I don't know what examples, but I remember running into this in typically Unreal Engine 5 games. And graphically, I think the game looks quite good and we're getting decent performance. We just have some of these weird quirks, like the setting menus aren't built for PC. You can't turn down the resolution on PC, which is a weird thing. We don't have things like frame generation, which I think could have been a pretty good feature in this game. You also get this weird bug where, or graphical anomaly, where when you turn the camera, it kind of looks like things are being duplicated around, which I think is a problem with the temporal stability, which is like upscalers and stuff take different frames over time and they try to combine them to make a stable image. And you could end up with these things. It just doesn't look quite right. It was one of the first things I noticed when I hopped into the game. But I didn't expect for this game to run so well, being Unreal Engine 5 and seeing the history with Silent Hill 2 Remake. That surprised me also when I first saw this. I was like, damn, this game is going to run like absolute dog shit. And it surprised me. Like, I hope all Unreal Engine 5 games can end up being like this. Now, I will say that they probably took advantage of the art style of the game somewhat to try to keep the game running well. Obviously, Silent Hill is a very, very big series in terms of fog, you know, and you can use fog in the distance to hide things and render less things, which makes the game run faster. Fog is like a built-in optimization hack if they do use it properly. I'm not sure if they're 100% using it properly here, but hey, it runs pretty well. Or it's just the fact that they didn't make like these extremely large, expansive environments that take up a ton of resources. Maybe they limited the scope in having more tight levels compared to a game like Borderlands 4 that is like an Unreal Engine 5 game that's completely open world and everything and just runs really poorly. Maybe having a tighter structure actually helps a lot with the performance. I'm glad that this doesn't seem like it's actually a problem, and maybe this guy just calculated it wrong or something. I don't really know what ended up happening here, to be honest. Let me know what you guys think about Silent Hill F. Apparently, from what I've heard and seen in reviews, that this game is pretty solid, and I'm actually saving to play the game a little bit closer to Halloween with some friends and stuff. But I'm hearing it's pretty good, graphically pretty good, performance pretty good. It needs a little bit of like, if they just fix the shader compilation stuff, I think this game would be pretty solid as well. And I'm gonna see you guys in the next video. Peace.